Hello and welcome back to the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Exposed. I'm Manny Goldman, the founder and CEO of The Sacred Plant. I will be your guest host for episode 5, The Complex Journey to Access the Sacred Plant. Your host, John Malanca, will return for episodes 6 and 7. I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you for joining us. We have so many powerful and moving stories in this episode, you will want to watch every minute of it. I'm grateful that you're here and that you're learning this vital information so you're empowered to help yourself and your loved ones. An extra special heartfelt thank you to those who purchased this series. Your support allows us to continue sharing this for free and to help even more people in need. It also gives you an amazing resource to own for life and the ability to give it to someone you care about. In our last episode, we explored how cannabis treats and beats cancer. We shared scientific studies that explained how cannabis gives our immune system back the ability to recognize cancer cells and program them for cell death. We saw this phenomenon at the Ohio State University Medical Center, where the cancer tumors in mice shrank after cannabinoid treatment. We met Jill, a stage 4 cancer patient who experienced a 20% shrinkage in her tumors after taking a combination of chemotherapy and cannabis oil. We also met Don, who had a tumor completely disappear from his neck after taking cannabis oils. We showed you how this anecdotal evidence is backed up by the research being done in medical laboratories, so there's a compelling case for more clinical research with cannabis and cancer. Coming up in this episode, we'll be meeting people who are providing medical cannabis to legal patients. We'll explain how the raw plant is being turned into medicinal oils and tinctures, and explain why doctors are not allowed to tell patients where to buy it. We'll also take a look at the obstacles many patients face in acquiring medical cannabis, including Jill and Patricia, whose stories we've been following closely over the last few episodes. We'll also meet Sebastian, who moved his entire family from Georgia to Colorado in order to provide a better quality of life for his son Jagger, who has mitochondrial disease.
My name is Sebastian Cott. With my wife Annette, we have a son called Jagger. Jagger is 4 years old, and he has a terminal form of mitochondrial disease called Lee's disease. He's been on hospice for 3 years. It's financially, emotionally, physically, it's very tiring. It's not something I would advise for anybody to do it unless you really have to do it. You don't become a medical refugee unless you really have to do it. We were out of options. That was the only option left. We try everything, 19 medication. What else can we give him? There's nothing that exists that we can give him. So we had to do it.
This is one of the stories that really breaks my heart. When families have to move out of their home state in order to access legal medical cannabis. But first, let's meet Diana Pena. Diana is a co-founder of Miriam's Hope, a California-based collective that provides medicinal cannabis for hundreds of patients. Let's hear why Diana started Miriam's Hope.
My mom was diagnosed January 2013, and right away from the very beginning we were told that she was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, glioblastoma, stage 4 brain cancer, and the prognosis wasn't very good. They told us, even with chemo and radiation, if it works, they said maybe about 6 to 9 months is what they initially said. And so of course it was devastating because it was just from one day she was okay to the next day she was not okay. My mom has always believed in alternative medicine, and so initially we didn't want to do chemo and radiation. So we went about a month, and in that meantime we were doing the whole diet thing and looking into getting her started on that. But within that time she actually started declining pretty quickly. And she actually had her first grand mal seizure a month after she was diagnosed. And when we took her into the hospital, that's when they gave us even more bad news. The tumor had almost tripled in size. They said if you don't start emergency chemo and radiation, she's not going to live more than maybe a couple weeks, few months. And so at that point, I just became even more desperate, and I just started researching clinical trials for brain cancer because I just didn't want to accept the prognosis. And I came across a study that had been done with glioblastoma patients in marijuana. And so the minute I put in the search bar on Google, marijuana and brain cancer, it was just like, wow. So much information. And so my sister's boyfriend, he smokes, and so I said, hey, I need you to make this for me. I'm not really sure what we're doing, but people seem to be healing themselves with this. And as time went on, she just started getting better and better and better. And then what happened was at the 8-month mark of doing chemo, the tumor itself had still shrunk a little bit, but she'd actually had progression through chemo. And during that time, we didn't have her on really high doses. And I think that stabilized the tumor, but I don't think it was enough to keep it from growing. And so they felt that the chemo wasn't really helping her anymore. So they stopped the chemo. And at that point I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go full blown with this and just take her up to a pretty high dose. So she went a few months with no treatment, just basically on the cannabis oil. And then in February, they put her on Avastin. And she had about 5 Avastin infusions from February 5th all the way to the end of March, which was the second MRI, which showed that the tumor had it went from like about a 3.6 to like less than a 1 centimeter tumor. And even her doctors were impressed. They were like, because I asked her doctor, I said, what were you expecting to see realistically? What were your expectations? And they said, typically Avastin is for stabilization. We don't really always expect the tumor to shrink this much. So at this point, we don't know if it's the Avastin or the cannabis. You know, it could be one or the other, or it could be the cannabis helping the Avastin work better. They said 6 to 9 months. So that was in January of 2013. And here we are a little bit over a year and a half later. And according to the CT scan, the tumor's not there. There's no other explanation other than it's the cannabis that's working for her. And, you know, when people think of cannabis, people that don't know, they're like, oh, I would never do that. In the future, in the very near future, you know, we can hopefully have studies and controlled studies. So this is something that everyone needs to have access to. And it's really sad when you have parents that are in other states. That's the most heartbreaking thing. I'm still like, why is this illegal? I don't understand, especially with all of these stories. You know, people say, well, anecdotal doesn't count. Well, then what do we have? Yes, it does. When you have hundreds of people that are, and probably now maybe even thousands, that are seeing results, especially when they're not doing chemo and radiation, how do you explain that? This has been around for thousands of years, and that I think that a lot of people don't realize that. It's been a medicine that's been used for many different things. It used to be sold by pharmaceutical companies before it became illegal. And when you look at the history of why it became illegal, it makes me so angry. It's just pure ignorance. And I'm hoping that we can change that.
When you support our mission today, we'll sponsor several families in California who need medical cannabis but can't afford it through the Miriam's Hope. This will give them the help they so desperately need. Now let's visit Miriam Hope's co-founder, Jeff Kaleri, as he makes one of their cannabis preparations.
So right now I'm basically just getting ready to make the oil. Today we're gonna make the AC/DC oil. The ratio on this particular flower is a 27:1, which is extremely high CBD. Basically meaning 27 parts CBD and 1% THC content. And here's the material right here. And you can definitely tell by the smells of high CBD plants the differences. And this stuff is pretty potent and super fresh. This stuff, honestly, it's really hard to find because it's so high in demand right now. And it's great medicine. So the first step, what we do is we get this plant material and we put it in our processor here to chop it up. Basically what that does, it basically helps you release more of the CBD and THC that's in the flower here. So when you put it in your solvent here, you get more of a yield out of the plant. We found that to be the best way to do it. We've tried different methods, we tried different techniques. This is the best way we found to get the most potency out of the plant and the most yield. So it really just depends, but this whole pound here, after we're done processing, will give us about 70 grams of oil, pure oil, which is really the concentrated stuff. And this stuff, if you smoke it, it's good for especially high CBD, good for people with anxiety disorders, back pain, post-traumatic stress. It's really good for. It doesn't have that psychoactive effect that most plants have. There's nothing that's high list, but there's obviously different levels. And that's one thing I have a hard time convincing people of, is there's so many different strains out there that do different things medicinally. They're just all used to getting high, getting high. That's all weed is, getting high, getting high. It's not about that, it's about medicine. And that's what I've learned over the past years. Even my own friends I've been friends with for years, I try to explain to them, if you smoke this, you're not gonna get high. It'll help you relax. No, it's gonna get me high, you're trying to trick me. I'm like, listen, I do this for a living, this is what I research, this is what I live, is this stuff. I know what I'm talking about, I'm not gonna trick you. This is This is actual medicine that people can use to treat illnesses and cancer. But most people, because of the whole federal government and, they put it on a Schedule 1, they're brainwashed. They think, okay, if the government thinks it's unsafe and is like compared to heroin, it's got to be unsafe. So that's kind of a stigma that's really hard to get over because it's been ingrained in our society for so long. That's one of the issues we deal with a lot, especially with even friends of ours that even see results that we get with her. They're still in disbelief. Like, no, it's not the weed, it's something else. It's got to be the chemotherapy, the radiation or something, which we haven't had her on in a long time. If you're looking for cancer treatment in itself, you need a combination of both. More THC than CBD, because CBD helps the tumor not to spread, I guess you want to say. It helps inflammation, helps a lot of other things in the body, so you need both. More THC, we found that like a 5-to-1 ratio, like 5 parts THC and 1 part CBD work the best with the majority of cancers we deal with. Because we've had people try, because the whole hype of CBD, I don't want to get high. We've had people try just CBD with cancers. We tell them you need both. They don't listen. They do it. It doesn't work. Their cancers get worse and they spread and they just go out of control. And now we're just going to take this to the garage and finish cooking the oil and get rid of all the alcohol. Because of the legalities of where the law, we try not to have our neighbors smell this stuff. It will smell a lot when you cook it. For legality purposes, we don't want the cops showing up or neighbors smelling it and saying, I smell marijuana and call the cops and we have a whole SWAT team showing up. And that's why we have to kind of go through these steps that we have to do to make sure that it's not detectable. So when you see stuff on the news of hidden houses, it's because they make us hide. The laws require it to make it so it's illegal, but we can't do it publicly. We have to hide. We have to do deals outside of safe locations. We have to do transactions that way, and it sucks.
The legal issues that Jeff just described can be a huge obstacle for both patients and medical providers. Another challenge for patients is a law that says doctors are not allowed to tell their patients where to find and buy safe and lab-tested medical cannabis. Patients are forced to figure this out on their own.
So we're not allowed to help patients obtain their cannabis in any way, but we do provide them with a lot of education on what to get and what to look for. We can't give it to them, we can't tell them where to go, we can't help them get it. But I think it's our responsibility as physicians to give them specific instructions about what to get and what would be most helpful for them so that they don't have to go through a 3-year process of trial and error and waste a lot of money and potentially not get the benefits that they're needing to and continue to suffer.
The reason we can't help a patient acquire cannabis is because we have a DEA license. And right now the DEA in the Controlled Substance Act considers cannabis a Schedule I substance, which means it has no medical value, and it's so dangerous you can't even safely use it under the guidance of a doctor, even though there's no way I could even kill any animal or patient with any enormous dose of cannabis. It's just totally non-lethal and non-toxic.
And most of the other medications that we prescribe are far more dangerous.
Even over-the-counter medications are far more dangerous.
Like ibuprofen.
So it is true that treating patients with cannabis by way of a medical professional is a different process. Physicians can recommend cannabis for a patient, but that's pretty much as far as it goes. They cannot lead you to a medicine. They cannot direct you to a company or a medicine. That would be considered aiding and abetting of a federally illegal substance. So this is why the process is much more of a challenge for patients. They want that information directly from their doctor, and they want to be under the care of their own doctor from beginning to end. And at this point, that's not possible.
We all need to be careful if you're consuming cannabis extracts or products of any kind. You need to go to a trusted source that uses truly natural production methods and doesn't have the synthetic ingredients and doesn't have the toxic solvents that are sometimes used to extract these constituents. Some people are using hexane or even butane to extract, hemp constituents. You don't want to be drinking or smoking hexane or butane, believe me.
We're allowed to tell patients about cannabis, but not how they can get it, which is very frustrating for a lot of patients because they think, they don't know anything about cannabis or where to get it, and they want very badly for us to just be able to provide it, and it's just something we can't do. So most people end up growing themselves or find dispensaries, but very few dispensaries are carrying raw leaf or have juicing programs. There was one in Mendocino that was providing fresh leaf and juicing on a regular basis, and they were shut down by the DEA recently. So the information's starting to get out to dispensaries more and more, but it's not as profitable for them. So many of them just can't deal with it, or they don't have an effective way of being able to tell if it's organically grown and don't want patients to get something that could compromise their health. So it's just starting to get out there, and we're hoping that most people will be able to grow themselves because it's the best way to get a steady supply.
Traditionally, if you're heating the cannabis, if you're going to make a baked good or smoking it, you're only looking for 10 milligrams. We're real interested in 400, 500, 600, 1,000 milligrams. So you pretty much have to grow it yourself, because if you go into the traditional system, they kind of expect $1 a milligram, and $10 is fine for a cookie or a brownie, but $1,000 for a glass of juice gets, it's kind of outside of the model. So if you're going to be doing hundreds of milligrams a day, you really need to grow it yourself, because it's really impossible to afford it on the open market, because the open market is aimed at this 10 milligram psychoactive dose. Most folks in Mendocino and Humboldt grow many of them year-round, and with some new techniques, a very small amount of light will allow you to provide, and you can supplement it with daylight, and then you just give it a little bit of additional light to keep it in vegetative state so it doesn't go into bloom and die.
I think the idea is that it's fine for people to develop industries around this. There's a lot of development that can go in that direction, but you cannot say that only people with that framework are going to be allowed to work with this plant and its various constituents. Who doesn't benefit from antioxidants and protection of the brain? How many people of us are aging and have age-related dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or suffer from strokes?
In our last episode, we met Jill, a stage 4 cancer patient and single mother. When Jill began using a cannabis a few years ago to treat her own cancer, it was illegal in her home state of New York. Let's hear what Jill had to go through in order to access the sacred plant.
I got a roommate in California. So I flew to California, signed the lease, went to Department of Motor Vehicles with my lease, which I don't even think they actually looked at my lease. I just said that I'm going to be living here a part of the time, which is true. And they wanted my current state license and $20, and that's it. And I have a card that I'm a resident of California. From there, being a resident of California, I went to see a doctor, and I had a letter from my doctor just stating that I'm being seen for neuroendocrine pancreatic cancer, and please give Jill all consideration possible. So I gave this doctor that letter, and from there she was able to sell me a medical marijuana license. So I got my card. So I became legal in California. So got my residency, got my card. Next stop was to go get the oil. It was a really good trip to California. So I am legal in California to purchase my medical marijuana, but not here yet. We're hoping. I would love to be able to legally treat myself here in New York City, where I would like to live. There's a possibility, if it doesn't happen, that I will be uprooting and moving to California, because I will have to. I will go through this process, get my card. I will go to the dispensary and talk to them and see what it is that they have. And I hope they have what I need, and I hope they have better than what I need. But somehow I'm getting the feeling that they're not there yet, and that I may have better medicine from elsewhere, which is sad. And it's sad because the program may not work, and it's not justified. If it doesn't work, it's not justified because we didn't give it the right opportunity and the right chance and the right setting. And everyone was so eager for this to open, but they weren't ready. They weren't ready. They're open before they're ready. We'll see. I mean, I have to get some questions answered, but I have a feeling for a while I'll still be getting my medicines the same way. And thinking, maybe spending more time in California. I still would really like to try the raw cannabis juicing. I really would love to. There's no way I could ever do that here. So only time will tell.
There are different types of organizations that make cannabis medicine, and they can range from personal, home-based operations to facilities that produce large quantities of medicine, and they distribute them in dispensaries. This is not to be confused with hemp-derived products, which are legal in all 50 states. In episode 7, we will explain the difference between the hemp-based product supplements and whole plant cannabis medicine. Now let's go to New York for the opening day of Manhattan's first medical cannabis dispensary, Columbia Care. Let's see how this dispensary will operate and what products patients will be able to purchase.
Thank you all for being here today. This is a momentous occasion for the development of this program and for the quality of care for a patient population that really deserves access to this product.
I'm Gail Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, and I am delighted to be here with Columbia Care. I'm here for a couple of reasons. From the very beginning, when Senator Diane Savino was talking about medical marijuana, I was supportive. I was supportive because I'm sure, like my colleague, I've known many people who have been ill with HIV/AIDS. And we all look forward to having more dispensaries in the state, having insurance, because people will have to pay now. But this is a very good beginning. And countdown. 1, 2, 3. Yay! Well, I'm the Borough President of Manhattan, and I have been supportive of the notion of medical cannabis, medical marijuana from day one, mostly because I have friends who have had or have HIV/AIDS, and they have used it. It was the best painkiller. So I know how effective it is. I also am glad because it's going to create a lot of jobs. The health benefits of marijuana. So that's why I'm here today. No, I think that it's exciting to have a dispensary here in Manhattan. The only disadvantage is we don't have insurance. That's the problem.
Eric, what's your last name?
Williams.
Excellent. Thank you. Come on in. I just want to add you.
Sure.
You with the blue shoe?
What's in Massachusetts? We're in Illinois.
Well, I think about the history of this community. In the 1980s, we had the first AIDS housing, and my predecessors fought for that in City Hall. There was some, opposition to it. So I feel that this community has always been very welcoming to not just different people, but different ideas. And, I think this is very important. It's very important for individuals who are in pain. And I'm glad that we have in the state finally come to a point where we're going to be able to make this available to patients who are in chronic pain.
State laws here in the U.S. are extremely confusing, especially not only between the states, but state to federal law. And it's no wonder we get calls all day long wanting to get clarification on their state or a state that they should possibly move to. There's either medical, recreational, whole plant treatment, or CBD only laws in states. There's even the extreme of CBD only for children with epilepsy only. So in that state, the state of Utah, that would negate an adult patient with epilepsy to be able to attain this medicine legally. So it runs the gamut. It's ever changing. The list of qualified conditions per state, it varies completely. Some states include PTSD, some states do not include it. Some states include migraine, others do not. So it's very important to take a look at your state laws. We do have a state law section on our website. We're constantly updating because they're being modified regularly. The qualifying conditions vary. The challenges for patients, you may be a legal autistic patient in one state, but in another state, autism is not on the list.
Well, first, patients will need to see their doctor. They're going to have a specific health condition. They can have cancer, AIDS, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and a couple other ones. And they also have to be in pain or have spasticity. And once the doctor agrees that it would be a good avenue, they'll have to get a certificate from him that he'll sign with a recommendation. They'll have to go online and get their card and register. And once they have both of those, they can come to the dispensary, show the information, and we can take them in and talk to them about what would be best for them and sit down and educate them as best we can and get them started at a low dose and work with them from there. We'll find out the right dosage, the right level of what they need, if it's going to be more THC versus CBD, and we will go from there and just find out the correct dose for their condition. So we're going to have oil for vaporization. We're going to have the vaporization pens here as well. We're going to have capsules. We're going to have tablets in the future. We also have oral mucosal tincture that you can take by mouth as well and absorb either under the tongue or in your cheek. And more of the non-smokable forms is what we will depend on here in New York State.
Patients who don't fall into the list of conditions within their state, even though the state is a legal state on some level for cannabis, they do fall into the medically illegal status if they don't have that specific qualifying condition or within that list. Many patients that we speak to are in that category, and they either are forced to move or they attain it illegally, which is unfortunate. So there are some states that you can go to that will allow you to attain medical cannabis even though you're an out-of-state, but it becomes very complicated. Again, this is something that we consult with patients every day on because it is very confusing. The lines are very blurred and nobody wants to get in trouble. They want to abide by the law, but sometimes they have to move, and you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to break the law to save a loved one's life.
One of the most concerning issues for cancer patients like Jill, who need high amounts of THC, is how to use the sacred plant without feeling its psychoactive effects. To treat her stage 4 cancer, Jill requires both THC and CBD, but as a single mother who runs her own business, she cannot afford to feel incapacitated. Let's see the way that Jill has figured out how to best dose her medicine.
So I'm making my suppositories with organic coconut oil because that's a really good carrier for the cannabis. It helps absorb it. These are my suppositories. So what I try to do is get around 1/2 gram of cannabis oil, THC, in with the coconut oil. Really, I'm supposed to weigh it out and have this exact ratio of the CBD to the THC. I just can't. It's too much work. It's too time consuming. Who knows? Nobody really knows anyway. If you ask different people, they're going to tell you different things. So many people say you should take 1 gram a day. Well, that doesn't mean anything. It depends on the percentage. You saw in here, there's different percentages. So, it's 1 gram of this to 1 gram of that is like apples and oranges. So it's just a little overwhelming to get it exactly. So I put roughly 1/2 gram in here, and I'm usually pretty on with it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna guesstimate how much coconut oil would be in 5 of these. 2, down to 2.5. I'll have 1.5 left. Okay, I'm gonna mix this, sort of kind of emulsifies it like a balsamic vinaigrette. This smells really bad. Okay. Actually, I have a little extra, so I'm going to make a couple more. Oh boy, don't spill it. Okay. This is really, it's science, but it's not science. But it is science, but it's not exact science because we don't have the exact science yet. But so now I know I have a little less than my target amount in each one of these. And if I feel up to it, I'll take a little bit more Once they're frozen, you can break off a little piece and put it in your mouth, and that's a really great way to absorb it. I didn't like the oils on their own because they burn, and it burns your mouth, and it's really uncomfortable, and you know, I don't like the taste. This is too thick and it's just not good. But this, if you break it up and just put it under your tongue, when it's frozen, it doesn't smell bad anymore. It's a really great way to take it. Usually if I take it rectally in the suppositories, I think I don't get as high, but I get tired. I've actually tried it a few times vaginally, and I know that's terrific for uterine cancers and ovarian cancers because you're putting the medicine right where it needs to go. I would love if someone would inject my pancreas and my liver and my lymphs. I would let them do it with the cannabis. And then this is like the oil, and it's just amazing. I mean, it's amazing on the skin. I mean, people use this to cure their skin cancers now, so I try not to waste it.
Are you enjoying today's episode so far? Are you learning a lot of great information? Do you want to join our movement and support our mission to inform the world of the truth about cannabis? Then please consider supporting our cause by owning this complete series so you can watch it again and share it with a loved one now or in the future. Your support allows us to continue researching the sacred plant and spreading our findings for free. Also, a portion of each sale gets donated to charities that are helping people every day to find relief for their pain and to live a longer, more vibrant life. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. Thanks in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping to change the world.
And then there was yet another possibility. New Jersey had only just passed the law legalizing marijuana for medical use. In order to qualify, you have to have less than a year to live. But the card will be valid for 2 years, so they seem to think it's okay if I survive for another year. A moot point, anyway, since there's no pot available. My experiment with the cannabis was going nowhere. I have an errand run. I need more cannabis. Now I'm in Portland, in Oregon, to secure a legal supply of it. And this is where I hope to get my medical cannabis card. Not surprisingly, I qualified for a medical marijuana card. My next task was finding a grower.
Since it's a single wide mobile home, it's a very small space, but it works.
Wow. So that's what they look like.
Yeah. This is organic. It's 100% organic, and there is a huge difference. And you can't spray it. You can only use water.
And how many people do you supply, you think?
I have, right at this moment, I have 2 other patients beside myself. And in a town like this where we're quote unquote weird, people are willing to go the alternative route to see if it works. And of course, it works. Come on, it's the oldest medicine in recorded history. My messy house, it's also a small place. I can show you what I get out of this tiny space.
Can I?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which one do we recommend for lung cancer?
Lung cancer. You want something that's going to you're not going to have to smoke very much of.
No, I don't want to. Should it not be, it should be Rick's oil. Do you know Rick's oil?
Yes, I make it.
You make it?
I do use Everclear and then put that in capsules.
That's just what I want.
Yes, and I have them. Let me show you. I have them. Right, hold on 1 second. I know exactly where I put them. Well, I have them in a box. Yes, they're really good. I weigh these things from start to finish. They weigh each a half a gram.
Okay.
As many as you like. I made 250 of them. I'm gonna give you some of these things. This is some really nice herbs. So we're gonna give you a bunch of different things here to try. So this is all new.
You know, when you're in my situation, you try everything.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know, I have glaucoma, so I know it works for me, and I've been doing that for a long time now.
Wonderful. Oh, wonderful. Mission accomplished. As a bonus, I went to a dispensary and had a massage with cannabis oil. So now I'm a relaxed, homebound traveler, but still a criminal for crossing state lines with marijuana in my suitcase.
In terms of state laws, legal, illegal, CBD or otherwise, once patients attain this medicine, if they've had to leave their own state to do so, once they've attained it legally, to get it home to their state is illegal. It is illegal to transport cannabis across any state lines. So people do run a risk of either losing their medicine or facing charges of some sort, depending on their state.
They're so desperate, and you just wish you could fly them out here and give them somewhere to stay and medicate them.
It's absurd, but what angers me more is when I hear patients talk about, either patients or parents talking about their children and how they want this so badly for their children, but they can't. I mean, I don't know, I'm a mother. There's nothing I wouldn't do to save my child, and there's nothing I wouldn't do to save me to be here for my child. I don't want to break the law, and I shouldn't be breaking the law to help myself. I did, for the most part, do everything that I needed to do to keep this as legal as possible.
You could have two cannabis legal states side by side, but still transporting cannabis across state lines is illegal. That being said, it's happening every day with families who are trying to treat a loved one or hoping for one last chance for themselves. So people are traveling to illegal states, attaining the medicine legally, and bringing it back is illegal. It's funny, we've had clients in cannabis illegal states saying, I don't care if I get caught, I want to show that I did the best I could to adhere to the law. So they would attain it legally in another state, knowing that it's illegal to bring it home, but still feeling that that might help in the court of law, that they did the best they could to stay within legal guidelines. So it's really sad to watch these families have to go through this and worry. It's one of the toughest parts of our company, and talking with these patients and going through it with them. It's very difficult.
Mark Peterson suffered from migraines and fibromyalgia as a result of exposure to heavy metals and toxins. He was on disability and had lost most of his quality of life. Let's hear what happened when Mark discovered the sacred plant.
Over 20 years ago, I was exposed to heavy metals, lead, cadmium, and arsenic in the community where I used to live. Herculaneum, Missouri, the lead smelting was the principal industry there. I remember times jogging around the track and not being able to see the other side of the track for the sulfur fumes. After high school and college, I made the mistake of moving back there, actually, and I actually purchased a house from my wife's grandfather who was dying of cancer. That's when things started getting really bad for me. When I got ill, basically one by one, everything fell away. I lost the new cars, the home, the marriage, the profession, and it took everything away. By 1997, I was on full disability, and it was also that year that I rediscovered cannabis. The thing that was the most remarkable about it was the return of my memory, and memories flowing back like Technicolor. These are important memories like the birth of my 3 children. And that was the most amazing thing, was I started finding out that my story wasn't anything unusual. There were people literally all over the country who were experiencing the medical benefits of cannabis. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because what I've realized in the state of Colorado, 90% of the people who need cannabis don't have access. The primary reason is it's cost prohibitive. There's the frustration in all this. You know, as I said, I've taught people all over the country how to make cannabis oil and how to make it the same way as I do. The production of other essential oils is virtually identical. But just that one element, cannabis, seems to make it all something else, something terrible. It doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely insane. Particularly when you realize that the medical programs for every state across this country, what were they started for? They were for the treatment of chronic and terminal illness. Here we are treating chronic and terminal illness, and the only thing that law enforcement and the courts can think about is money. That's all it's about. Cartels on one side and law enforcement on the other side, and they're both after the same thing, money, and the patients are the ones who lose.
It's a shame. People shouldn't have to be forced to break the law to try this medicine. These patients are not people flying across the country to get a product to get high. These people are literally fighting for their life. Sometimes they can't even fly themselves. A different family member has to fly for them or drive for them, and in turn risking their livelihood. They may be arrested. They should not be forced to do this. You'd be surprised at who is doing this, whether they're clergy, medical researchers, to law enforcement, to you name it. So yes, people are forced to break the law. We've seen some people trying to ship it back home. The medicine is intercepted and it doesn't make it home, and now that family is paid good money for that medicine, yet only to come home to not receive it, which is a shame when they're struggling financially anyway with their medical bills. So yes, we've seen that quite a bit. We've seen a family member drive to a legal state to attain the medicine, to drive it back to their home state for a loved one, and get stopped and arrested, facing felony charges because of that state's laws. It is a travesty. All we're trying to do, and all these people are trying to do, is save a loved one's life. These are not drug dealers, these are not recreational users. It breaks our heart every day, and I can say that in our office, tears are shed every day based on these struggles.
This isn't a joke. It's not a commentary. These are real lives. These are real people.
Now we're going to meet Sebastian, a loving father who moved his entire family from Georgia to Colorado in order to provide a better quality of life for his son Jagger, who has mitochondrial disease. When families have to move out of their home state in order to access medical cannabis, they are called medical refugees. Sebastian has an amazing story to share.
My name is Sebastian Cott. With my wife Annette, we have a son called Jagger. Jagger is 4 years old, and he has a terminal form of mitochondrial disease called Lee's disease. He's been on hospice for 3 years. It's financially, emotionally, physically, it's very tiring. It's not something I would advise for anybody to do unless you really have to do it. You don't become a medical refugee unless you really have to do it. We were out of options. That was the only option left. We try everything, 19 medication. What else can we give him? There's nothing that exists that we can give him. So we had to do it. After we couldn't pass a bill, we moved to Colorado in August. And we put Jagger on some oil, high CBD oil for the seizure, and also some THC for his muscle pain. So we've been there for about 10 months now, and it's working really good for him. Jagger is on a ton of medication. Before we moved to Colorado, he was on 19 medication and supplements. Anything from Valium to methadone, baclofen, Neurontin, morphine, oxycodone. And since we've been in Colorado, we decreased one of his seizure meds called Keppra. And in Georgia, we used about 2 or 3 times a month. So not quite every week, but 2 or 3 times a month. And since August, we have not used it once. And actually threw away a bottle of morphine last week, the expired. So that was great. And we strongly believe that if you increase the quality of life, you're going to increase the quantity of life. Being a medical refugee is not easy. For us, the big thing was to get to Colorado. Jagger cannot be on a commercial airplane because it requires too much oxygen. So we decided to drive to Colorado. A portable oxygen can only go up to 3 liters, and it's on battery. We could only drive about 3 hours a day. It took us 6 days. So that's definitely not something we're looking forward as far as going back is the trip. But that was really hard. In Georgia, we just bought a house. It was a handicap accessible house. We can move him from one room to another. We had a wheelchair, we had a walker, all the equipment, and we couldn't take that to Colorado. And we live in a small 2-bedroom apartment. He's on oxygen all the time with the altitude in Colorado. In Georgia, it was on oxygen 12 to 14 hours a day. It's 24/7. So that makes it hard to go anywhere. I think we took him to the zoo once. Some of those seizure medication or pain medications the kids are taking are 1 million times worse than THC, and they get you way higher than THC. Because the main concern, obviously, is always the high, which to me is it makes no sense because, Jaggers take 50 milligrams of Valium a day. He's 4 years old. If you think that doesn't get him high, that will get him higher than any dose of THC I can ever give him. ever. But nobody even, blink about that. It's okay, he's on hospice, he needs to get his pain medication. Let's give him Valium. I mean, if anybody believes for 1 second that that much morphine and that much Valium does not get him high, then they are mistaking big time. I mean, and I can give him a lot of THC, it won't get him high as much as a Valium. It won't happen, it won't do that. And it's natural, it's safe, he has no side effect, and it works better for his pain. I hope we don't ever have to have a conversation like this. I hope it's just, your kid, or you're not doing well, you just go to your doctor and your doctor thinks THC or CBD or, CBG or whatever the cannabinoid might be down the road, it's what's for you, then you can just get it. And you can just, medicate yourself without having fear of going to jail or having your child taking bad child services. So that's my hope, then that will happen, hopefully in my lifetime. I'm still young enough, hopefully I get to see that. But we don't know. But we're making progress. As parents, it's hard when your kid is dying in front of you, but you do all you can, and that's all we could do, and we did it. And I don't regret it. 1 second. I mean, it's better for him. It's better for us.
We've seen it time after time after time. Patients eradicating their cancers with cannabis. But patients can't get their cannabis in states where it's illegal, states like Missouri. To consume it in the amounts that a patient would require would most certainly make them a felon. So what does a patient do? Particularly, what does a patient do if they don't have the money to travel halfway across the country? There's a very simple answer to that. They die. How is it that we change the law so that people don't have to adhere to state borders, where everyone's will have that same access, the same treatment? It seems to really make sense to think about it, For me personally, what this really means is, I'm 60 years old. I'm facing 5 felony counts. One of them, just one of them, carries a mandatory 8-year prison sentence. So essentially what this is a life sentence for me. It's very obvious they wanted me to go away. It's hard for me to think that there are people out there that I could have helped, and I can't. I can't because the laws in this country are such that they look more towards recreational use and not towards what we really desperately need in this country, and that is hope. And that's what cannabis represents. It represents hope. It represents hope for so many people battling terminal illness. It represents hope for our country as well.
You've heard some heartbreaking stories about how many hoops sick patients have to jump through to get access to the sacred plant. There are many more who are desperate to get cannabis for loved ones and cannot afford to become a medical refugee. No one should be put in this position where they have to become a felon to save their own life or the life of a loved one. But sadly, there are many patients like Patricia who see no alternative but to illegally bring cannabis across state lines. The cannabis industry has grown very quickly and attracted many entrepreneurs who are seeking profits. As you've seen, there are dedicated and compassionate people making cannabis medicine, but there's also a lot of misleading information out there and companies who sell subpar products. We'll talk more about the products and the safety and regulations in episode 7. The host of our series, John Malanca, and his wife, Corinne, founded the nonprofit United Patients Group after the sacred plant saved Corinne's father's life. United Patients Group educates and advocates for patients as they navigate through this largely unregulated system. Proceeds from the sales of the series will be donated to United Patients Group to help further their important work.
Working every day with families and their loved ones is rewarding, but also challenging. I wouldn't trade it for the world. We are thrilled to be there for these families from across the world. We have contacts that are the most genuine, close friends of ours, but we've never met them in person. So I wouldn't change it for the world. We love being a part of giving and not taking. And whether it's the gift of life or the gift of peace and comfort, or just the support of knowing that people count on us as support, fills my heart.
Thank you for joining us for episode 5 of the Sacred Plant docuseries. I hope you were moved by the stories of the people who went to great lengths to access and utilize the sacred plant. Unfortunately, it's often a complex and frustrating journey for patients. As you are probably starting to realize, the advancement in medical cannabis won't be accomplished through mainstream research and big pharma funded facilities. It will be accomplished by the brilliant minds and scientists who are taking the risk and thinking outside the box. It will be brought about by people like you and me who take the time to educate themselves about the healing wonders of the sacred plant. I ask you to join me in educating others about the benefits of medical cannabis and how to help ease the suffering of your loved ones. It's likely you have a loved one suffering from one of these conditions. It's also likely that this person is taking heavy loads of pharmaceutical drugs to treat their condition, but they're creating toxicity and inflammation in their bodies that can lead to more disease. What if they're able to treat their condition through harnessing the power of their own immune system by taking the sacred plant? Think about how many billions of dollars would be lost by the pharmaceutical industry. That realization alone will tell you why this information is not out there. Coming up next in episode 6, we're going to teach you how to effectively use medical cannabis by explaining the science behind proper dosing. We're also going to look at some surprising benefits of cannabis for healthy people, especially how it could reverse inflammation and the aging process. As we will show you, the sacred plant has incredible benefits for senior citizens. We'll follow Jill as she makes her first visit into her local dispensary, and we'll see if the medicine she finds is suitable for fighting her stage 4 cancer. Patricia will get the results of her latest scans, and we'll find out if the cannabis oil she worked so hard to acquire is helping slow the spread of her terminal cancer. Thank you for watching our series, and a special thank you to those who generously supported our mission to spread this message far and wide. God bless you and your loved ones. I invite you to join our movement, support our mission, and help us save lives. We're a small company that's committed to the truth and to helping humanity. Since we don't have the unlimited resources that Big Pharma has, we need to work together to educate and empower more people about the healing benefits of the sacred plant. When you support our mission by owning the series today, you will allow us to continue to research, interview, expose, and share this knowledge with the world for free, just like we're doing now. If you've learned something, been inspired, want to watch again, share it with a loved one, or just love how it feels to support a good cause, consider owning the sacred plant Healing Secrets Exposed today. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. Thanks in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping to change the world.